the word radio to 83393.
Is this the tiger?
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Clippers continued their dominant performance Thursday night in Portland. They beat the Trailblazers 118-89 for their third straight win. In the last two games, the Clippers have outscored their opponents by a combined 88 points. Norman Powell led the Clippers with 23. The Clippers play the Lakers Sunday night in the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. Clippers owner Steve Ballmer is donating $15 million to victims of the wildfires and first responders. In a statement, Ballmer said most of the money is going to the racially diverse community of Altadena, one of the hardest hit areas by the wildfires. The Lakers are back in action tonight. They play Brooklyn at Crypto.com. This is D'Angelo Russell's first trip back to L.A. after the Lakers traded him to Brooklyn on December 29th. It'll be interesting to see how Brooklyn responds after their 59-point loss to the Clippers on Wednesday. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Here they come, y'all. Here they come. Here they come, y'all. Here they come.
Get out the way. Move.
First things first with Dominique DiPrima at 6 a.m. Tavis Smiley at 9 a.m. Truth Time with Dr. Cornell West and Nina Turner at 12 noon. Here they come, y'all. Here they come. Here they come, y'all. Here they come.
Get out the way. Get out the way. Get out the way.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show at 1 p.m. The D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show at 2 p.m. A More Perfect Union with Dr. Nee Quarterly Quartet at 4 p.m. Here they come, y'all. Here they come. Here they come, y'all. Here they come.
Get out the way. Get out the way. Get out the way.
Tune in weekdays from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. for the talk of the town. Only on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. Here they come, y'all. Here they come.
Super. Good. Inglewood. Purple rain falling down on the prince of the coast where the sun shine all year round. Purple haze over landscape, still I hydrate in the lunch line with the smog and clouds. Would start me out. This song's in the key of life, and love is in need of more. Young from Inglewood, barefoot on the cedar floor. If black music is the blood, then my heart has been beating more. Rapidly, happily, I look back on Afeni Shakur. Her son paved the way. Now all eyes on me, cause I'm young, black, and gifted. Nina, all eyes gon' see. If you swung back when faced with a challenge that's meant to break you and balance scales, you ain't average. Now throw your hands on three. Gon' put them up for black magic,
black excellence, black habits, this black medicine, everything
black chucks, everything.
Everything
Black hug, black love, everything.
Praise black Jesus, play like Moses. Give them flowers while they still give black roses. Everything
black tie, black ride, everything.
Everything
black pride, black lives, everything.
KBLA Talk 1580. Black. Time to talk reparations. That's what we do on Fridays, every single Friday, trying to cover the field in terms of all of the different philosophical outlets, the movements, commissions, and progress on this important issue. And we are making progress, quiet as it's kept, and despite the setbacks. Joining me right now, a woman who, as she mentions, if I read the whole bio, well, we won't have a show. But she has been a reparationist for a very long time. She was a founding co-chair of the Howard University student chapter of NCOBRA. She's been a producer at large with Pacifica Radio since the 1990s, including co-anchoring a national broadcast, Millions for Reparations, which happened way back, the Millions for Reparations March, I should say, of 2012, and Rapping for Reparations at Howard University, among other reparations organizing activities. Professor Fahima Seck, welcome.
Good morning, Dominique, and greetings to the KBLA
delegation. I'm accustomed to being on the other side of the microphone.
I know, but I also see you very active in the chat many times when we're talking reparations. And I know that's because you have a long history of it, but I also know that you have more of an internationalist perspective than many of the people who support reparations in this younger generation of activists, not just, FBA, but and not just ADOS, but other young reparations activists who have a particular focus on the American freedman or the African American.
Yeah. So, Dominique, the international effort had its genesis in the UN Conference Against Racism in 2001. And part of the Durban Declaration were two things. One, that slavery was a crime against humanity, and that we are a people of African descent. And they have had a series of events to acknowledge that. In fact, we are coming out of the decade of people of African descent, which actually had its last program a couple of weeks ago in Cuba. And so there are people who are here in the U.S. and globally who are concerned about reparations, and they came together. I think the last time was earlier last year in Geneva, Switzerland, and there were actually people from the California Reparations Commission and folks that are part of commissions all over the country here in the U.S. and also those internationally. And so this is a global issue, and it should be looked at on a micro level because it is an issue of great magnitude.
So explain how, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding around what that looks like, because I always hear people saying, and I know, for example, that California Reparations Task Force Chair Camila Moore was there last year in Geneva, among others. She was, of course, the chair of the California Task Force. But explain what that looks like, because I hear people who believe that an international approach to reparations means that the U.S. government would have to pay reparations to people in Africa or to people throughout the Caribbean. And many just don't think that is fair or right.
Well, that's not the case, not at all. For example, in the Caribbean, you have CARICOM, who is holding Great Britain accountable. And so you have other countries that were subject to colonization holding those colonizers accountable. And here in the United States, it is not just the federal government in the United States. Ta-Nehisi Coates did the case for reparations, which was a comprehensive tallying of the harms and wrongs that were done. So, but back to your original question, and I'll come back to that. So, just as the which was I think it was called the third meeting of the people of African descent, which met in Geneva, Switzerland. They'll be meeting again somewhere this spring. So there were people from reparationists, if you will, from every sector of the world who came together. And they come together because we were harmed. And so then they go back to their respective places to work on reparations. So it's not that anyone from CARICOM is as demanding that the U.S. Give those in those various islands reparations. It's just coming together because this is a global issue, and the fact of the matter is that it's not just one particular culprit. Ta-Nehisi Coates' case for reparations, he looks at redlining. He looks at the insurance companies. He looks at the universities. And so it's not just, reparations isn't just one thing. The first move that I recall was when Georgetown University, students actually dug up how Georgetown University had sold enslaved Africans in order to save the university. And there were efforts to make restitutions. And then you had a town in Virginia who had refused to comply with Brown versus Board of Education. And so there was restitution made there. And as you know, I think you had Attorney Areva Martin on recently who was dealing with the Palm Springs wrong that was done. So it's not just one thing, it's multi-layered. And so it's not just, we need the federal government to pay, because this was a comprehensive global Mayasa.
Again, I mean, you are clearly used to talking about this. You're really eloquent. But just to recap, really what you're saying is that each country needs to hold whoever enslaved them or harmed them accountable. So Jamaicans have to hold, the English accountable, and Haiti has to hold the French accountable, like that.
Absolutely. CARICOM is attempting to hold Great Britain accountable. They haven't said, U.S., give us reparations. And so people who muddy the water are trying to, confuse and conflate things. So that's not the case. It's just Black African people of African descent were harmed on a global level. And so periodically they come together, can convene, strategize, etc., and they go back to their respective places to do the work. That's
meaning the reparationists from all these different countries come together in a conference and say, hey, what are you doing that's working? What are you doing that's working? What are the standards? But it's not necessarily or not at all a situation where one is trying to get reparative compensation from another one's enslaver, if you will.
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. In fact, that wouldn't even, that doesn't even have any legal standing. And so the idea is to strategize and to empower each other. I think I may have sent you the link of the testimonies that took place last year in Geneva, Switzerland. And no one was saying from any other country saying we want reparations for the United States, and no one from any of the commissions or the organizations that were there were saying we want reparations from Britain. People are holding their respective culprits accountable.
Yeah, as they should. And it feels like we're in a period of progress. I want to talk about some of that progress internationally. I also want to look at the growing conversation about whether there are nations in Africa that owe reparations to Black Americans, and whether the United States owes for stealing people from there. Those are a little complicated, but I think we need to talk about them because, as you've said, Fahima, Professor Seck, these are the things that confuse people and create discord and dissent among those who are doing the work. It's a Freedmen Friday. I'm Dominique DiPrima for KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward. Now that Donald J. Trump has been elected to a second term as president, please join the Empowerment Congress and KBLA Talk 1580 to examine the question, where do we go from here? Chaos or democracy? At the Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science on Saturday, January 25th. Some of LA's top elected officials, Representative Sidney Comlager Dove, Mayor Karen Bass, Supervisor Holly Mitchell, and City Council President Marquise Harris Dawson will be on hand for what promises to be a lively and informative conversation. Doors open at 8 a.m. The general session, moderated by Tavis Smiley and broadcast live on KBLA Talk 1580, begins at 9 a.m. The event is free, but seating is limited and registration is required. Go to the Empowerment Congress website at www.empowermentcongress.org to register. Where do we go from here? Chaos or democracy? Come join the Empowerment Congress and KBLA Talk 1580, Saturday, January 25th at the Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science. Doors open at 8 a.m. The free program starts at 9 a.m. Registration is required at www.empowermentcongress.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Well, good morning, kiddo. I love that you're home from college. I've missed you.
Still taking your nature-made vitamins?
Every day. A multivitamin and a probiotic. You better be taking yours.
Still looking out for me, Mom.
I'll never stop.
Made to care for you every day. Nature Made, the #1 pharmacist-recommended vitamin and supplement brand. Find us in the vitamin aisle, based on a survey of pharmacists who recommend branded vitamins and supplements.
Taxes was waiting around for your taxes to be done, which led to worrying about not getting any money back. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes in a day to get you up to $4,000 fast with a refund advance loan. Now this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Expert filing only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Refund advance has $0 loan fees and 0% APR. Refund advance loans may be issued by First Century Bank, N.A. or WebBank. Terms apply. Subject to approval.
Somebody's been praying for me.
Thanks to the generous support of the KBLA Talk 1580 delegation, we were able to donate 545 pounds of coats and blankets to the LA Mission this winter season.
Hallelujah, hallelujah.
The LA Mission expressed its deep gratitude for our gift all over social media, but we wish to thank them and all the other service providers who look out daily for the less fortunate in our community, finding our happy by being helpful.
Hallelujah.
We're KBLA Talk 1580, where we do more than just talk.
Somebody's been praying for me.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
Just a couple of bits of breaking news that I want to go to before we return to our conversation with Professor Fahima Seck regarding this Freedmen Friday. Israel's Security Cabinet has approved a Gaza ceasefire and hostage release agreement, something that Netanyahu was kind of blustering as if he was not going to make that happen. So we'll see. It still needs the approval of the full body of 30 ministers. They could approve it today. That ceasefire could take effect on Sunday. And the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that TikTok can be banned in the United States. They're upholding that ban. That means that should it be enforced, that ban could go into effect as early as Sunday. However, President Joe Biden has indicated he is not going to do it. You're not going to be mad at Joe Biden for banning TikTok. So he's going to leave that up to the president-elect. And so that means that TikTok will be up and running at least through Monday, but we shall see because there's the politics of what China decides they want to do. Meanwhile, President-elect Trump has invited the CEO of TikTok to be in a seat of honor at the inauguration. So that's interesting. It looks like the president-elect is going to try some kind of way to keep TikTok. But as of now, the Supreme Court says it can go. Returning to our conversation with Professor Fahima Seck, Honey Brown 24 in the chat on YouTube says, reminder, there have been at least 2 attempts at the UN to acknowledge the impact of slavery officially, and they were both stopped. I feel like I remember our current UN secretary acknowledging the impacts of our enslavement.
Can you hear me, Dominique?
Yes.
Yeah, well, actually, that's false because there is actually people's. It's the UN actually has. Is this picture talking about a kind of resolution? Because at the UN there was in 2001 there was a Durban conference, World Conference Against Racism, and there were many things that came out of the Durban Declaration. One of those things was that slavery was a crime against humanity and that we were a people of African descent. And then was the People's Permanent Forum of African Descent. that have been meeting periodically. So I don't know what the person is referring to, because in 2001, this was part of the Durban Declaration, and they formed a permanent commission, a People's Commission. Now, in terms of there's some is the UN attempting to hold the U.S. accountable. This is a global issue. It's not just the United States, and the United States is simply a microcosm in a macrocosm.
Yeah, I know for sure that that's when I was thinking of a day of remembrance and acknowledgement of the impacts of slavery by the Secretary General last year.
We just came out of a decade of people of African descent where there were a number of events and programs at the UN addressing this issue. But I wanted to go back to your earlier question regarding Africans being involved with the transatlantic slave trade.
Oh, don't worry. I was going back there. I didn't forget. And I actually asked about 3 or 4 questions in that regard. The first one being, let's start with, does Africa owe descendants of enslaved Africans in this country reparations because of their certain African nations profiteering off of the slave trade?
Okay, well, first off, it would be folly not to acknowledge that there weren't Africans that were involved in the transatlantic slave trade. But at the same time, we must also acknowledge that there were numerous people who fought against the transatlantic slave trade, and it would be folly to acknowledge that not only were people taken and brought here, but people's mothers, fathers, children were taken. People are not recognizing that. Yes, there were folks that were brought here, and at the same time, that person who was brought here was ripped from a family. And, Haile Gerima, who did Sankofa, he was supposed to have been doing a documentary on slave resistance because there's not enough discussion that's talked about slave resistance. There are numerous efforts to...
You mean slave resistance in Africa, not in this country?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, there was numerous, we may know about Queen Nzinga, but there are a number of resistance. There were numerous resistance against slavery because, again, people were losing their family members. And we were brought here, but we were ripped away, not just from a culture. People emphasize on what we lost in terms of being ripped away from a culture and a heritage. But people were taken away from their family. And this wasn't something that I had considered till one of my students had brought it up. And she had mentioned about, how she had a relative who actually poured libations for those ancestors who were taken away and ripped away at one of the, the slave ports. And
yeah,
so
and when we toured the slave dungeons of Ghana on the coast there, that was part of the presentation by the guide, was about the sorrow and terror of Africans losing their ancestors, but also their regret at not having resisted even more, and some nations having participated. And I got to tell you, Professor Seck, when I went to the castle, the palace of the Ashanti in Ghana, it sent shivers down my spine to see all of the guns that they have on display and the dates that they received those guns, because they correspond with the enslavement of our people. What were those guns traded for?
Yes, it's no secret that the Ashantis were involved with the transatlantic slave trade. There's no secret about that. But again, there were people whose families were ripped away, and so people try to. Some people, when they see an African, your family sold my. That's not a reality. You may be talking to someone who had their family taken away. So there needs to be a healing.
Well, so that was the other side of the coin. Of course, there needs to be a healing, but we're talking specifically about reparations. So, do the Ashanti, for example, owe reparations to African Americans, and does America owe reparations to those who had their families stolen, literally family members stolen? I'm not quite sure how you track it, but we know, for example, that there are certain nations that had a disproportionate number of us who were kidnapped from there.
Well, I think that's all part of the reparations movement, to hold people accountable, to get restitution. And I think it was Tony Browder. He'd been on your show, and it's not just yes, and of course making people whole a part of it, but it's also a healing that's necessary. A healing that's necessary that has to take place for people to be made whole.
That's one of the reasons why I support the work of African Focus Incorporated. They specifically have African families adopting African American families symbolically. And then when you go to Africa, you have a new adopted family there, doing the work to spread, correct information about Africa to African Americans and about African Americans to Africa. So I understand that, but I'm talking about like specific cash and other kinds of resource exchange. Do you believe that should be part of this conversation when it comes to Africa or not?
Well, I'm not going to say no, because, if harms were done, harms need to be done and people need to be held accountable. But I don't think many of these places who had people depleted are in any condition to provide reparations, because they've been colonized to death.
Yeah, I get that.
Absolutely. But I also wanted to add that I'm really, to a large degree, invigorated and happy that Ayanna Pressley, for example, has reintroduced HR.
Yeah, we were going there. We were going there after News, Traffic, and Sports. Y'all want to interview yourselves. I guess that's because you're a radio person. That's fine. We've got a minute right here, though, and then we will address that because the return of HR 40 is here. I want to know how viable you think that is and what we can do to support it under Ayanna Pressley, who currently has no co-sponsors, I believe. But just to wrap this up, so much misinformation about CARICOM and the reparations movement in Africa. What would you say in 1 minute here about that?
Well, I would say that people have access to the internet to digest misinformation. They have access to the internet to also research for themselves. CARICOM is not some hidden secret. They can go to CARICOM's website and look and see. They're holding Great Britain accountable. Then no one said anything about we want Black Americans reparations, and that's really not what's happening. People can look up information for themselves.
I think that's, I'm laughing because, the library is still free, but also some folks seem to look at the wrong places. You can get on the internet and hear all kinds of crazy things about Africa and reparations. Yeah, but to your point, CARICOM.org, if you want to go straight to the source. News, traffic, and sports, then more on a Freedmen Friday, KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. Donald Trump is nominating Troy Mink for Air Force Secretary. Mink, a director at the National Reconnaissance Office, will work closely with Defense Secretary nominee Pete Hegseth. If confirmed, Mink will oversee critical Air Force programs. President-elect Trump's cabinet picks faced Senate confirmation hearings Thursday. Pam Bondi, Doug Burgum, Lee Zeldin, and Scott Bessent testified. A polar vortex will bring below zero temperatures to much of the U.S. this month, starting this weekend. Temperatures could drop 35 degrees below average with freezing conditions expected from Maine to Idaho and the southeast. And music stars like Jelly Roll, Earth, Wind & Fire, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers will perform at the Fire Aid Benefit Concert on January 30th to raise money for the LA wildfire victims. The concert will be streamed live by iHeartRadio. I'm Bree Wood on the Black Information Network, your home for Black News First.
Every day, a child in poverty waits for a sponsor is another day of hopelessness. There are thousands of kids who've been waiting over a year. End their wait. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Just text the word radio to 83393.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Clippers continued their dominant performance Thursday night in Portland. They beat the Trailblazers 118-89 for their third straight win. In the last two games, the Clippers have outscored their opponents by a combined 88 points. Norman Powell led the Clippers with 23. The Clippers play the Lakers Sunday night in the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. Clippers owner Steve Ballmer is donating $15 million to victims of the wildfires and first responders. In a statement, Ballmer said most of the money is going to the racially diverse community of Altadena, one of the hardest hit areas by the wildfires. The Lakers are back in action tonight. They play Brooklyn at Crypto.com. This is D'Angelo Russell's first trip back to LA after the Lakers traded him to Brooklyn on December 29th. It'll be interesting to see how Brooklyn responds after their 59-point loss to the Clippers on Wednesday. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
I've just been feeling so sluggish lately.
You should try the Metamucil 2-week challenge.
The Metamucil 2-week challenge?
Yeah, Metamucil 4-in-1 fiber helps trap and remove the waste that weighs you down. Start your daily routine now, and in 2 weeks, you could be feeling great. Well, it's been 2 weeks. How you feeling?
Lighter and feeling great.
If you want to feel lighter by promoting digestive health, sign up to take the 2-week challenge at Metamucil.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
This is the story of the one who, as a maintenance specialist for a historic high-rise, knows that vintage charm historically needs constant attention. Which is why, when it's time to upgrade turn-of-the-century mechanicals, they turn to Grainger. With easy access to 1 million-plus products and the scale to deliver when and where you need them. The right tools and supplies are never far away. So the one can keep that vintage building running like new. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
KBLA Talk 1580 stands with you in tough times, connecting you with resources and what you need to know. Evacuation shelters are located in the Pasadena Civic Center, the Dream Center in LA, the Westwood Recreation Center, and many more. You can call 311 for details. Santa Anita Park in Arcadia is a pop-up mutual aid hub where you can pick up anything from clothing to food and hygiene supplies. If you're in Los Angeles County and in need of food, call Omni Ministries at 310-631-1557. Donations can be made to Zelle, Omni Ministries, Inc. at yahoo.com. Parking Lot I outside of Rose Bowl Stadium is a pop-up mutual aid hub where you can pick up everything from clothing to food to hygiene supplies for free. To volunteer or donate to help victims of the fire, contact the LA Emergency Network at enla.org. The Cochran Firm and Ivy McNeil, Wyatt Purcell and Diggs, Jasmine Canick, and others have launched a GoFundMe specifically targeting Altadena. Visit LA Fires, the impacted Black community urgently needs help on GoFundMe, and donate to help Black evacuees fighting for survival. Airbnb is offering free temporary housing to people displaced by the fires. Call 211 to sign up. The LA Chamber of Commerce is stepping up to help you sort out insurance claims and other paperwork. Reach them at 213-580-7500. South LA Cafe has free groceries, clothing, and water available at 1700 Browning Boulevard in LA. Track their giveaways or volunteer through their Instagram at South LA Cafe. U-Haul is donating short-term storage free of charge for 30 days to evacuees. Shelter for small or large animals can be accessed by calling 211. A Black-led coalition of community organizations is offering support and resources in the Altadena area at the Flint Ridge Center at 236 West Mountain Street in Pasadena. For comprehensive lists of resources for housing, food, shelter, and more, visit Mutual Aid LA Network on Instagram. Praying for LA and standing with you. KBLA Talk 1580.
Heard any other talk radio lately that sounds anything like this? We didn't think so. You're listening to Unapologetically Progressive, KBLA Talk 1580.
And, excuse me, I'm receiving word that our guest for next hour's been detained, will not be able to be with us. So we're opening up the phone lines, and we do have a lot to talk about with this Supreme Court decision around TikTok and the appearance that we will actually have a ceasefire in Gaza. Also want to let you know that since the Martin Luther King Day Parade, the Kingdom Day Parade is canceled on Monday, well, postponed until February. There is a preparedness and organizing to fight fires and fascism meeting at the Center for Black Power in Leimert Park, 43rd and Crenshaw, and will be from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Free dinner will be served. Go to nocopnation.org for more information. Professor Fahima Seck, she's got an MSW from Howard University School of Social Work, a BA in Sociology. She's got a diploma in Paralegal Studies from New York University School of Professional Studies, and she is a longtime reparationist. From college days forward, Fahima, what drew you into that, into really a lifelong quest to be in search of reparations?
Well, I came of age in New York in the midst of Afrocentricity, and I dropped out of college, but after being exposed to Black people who looked like me, it told me that I could aspire and achieve, and many of them mentored me. And so I saw organizations like the Republic of New Africa, and were around scholars like the late Barbara Sizemore and others who really, and also my mentor, I have to mention, she recently transitioned, Dr. Andrea Nicola McLaughlin, who was part of those students that took over Lewis Strait Hall at Cornell University that brought in James Turner's Africana Studies Institute. And so it was people like that who were beneficiaries of the civil rights movement who passed it on to the subsequent generation, and seeing the work that they were doing inspired me just to give a portion of what was given to me onto the next generation. And so it was those people and the examples that they lived and seeing them that really motivated me.
So yes, you brought up Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who has taken up the mantle of reparations, and she's just a mover and shaker in Congress, a true progressive. She's also the spearheading end to qualified immunity. But this is interesting to me that no one else is joining her in this at this moment. Do you think that's significant?
Well, she reintroduced H.R. 40, as we know, started with the late dean of the Congressional Black Caucus, John Conyers, and then the mantle was picked up by Sheila Jackson Lee. She introduces in the very beginning. So what people can do is to call their respective legislators and ask them to be a co-sponsor. I mean, the legislative session just began. We're in the very beginnings. Again, the new president won't be inaugurated until next week.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but a lot of times people bring bills with co-sponsors on them already.
Well, yeah, but again, I would just say this is the beginning of the legislative session, and just people can just encourage their representatives to be co-sponsors.
Yeah.
That's what people can. Can I just go back to another point you had mentioned
of course.
earlier about the African? What has happened is there have been a number of African kings who have come to the U.S. to apologize for their ancestors' involvement in slavery. And that doesn't get enough attention. A lot of people, have not acknowledged that, or maybe they weren't aware of that, but that has happened. And I think that that's something that should be recognized. I don't think that it's a situation where Africa is denying and hiding and denying what they were involved, but the entire continent wasn't involved because, again, people were taken away and families were disrupted. So that's the point I wanted to make.
And I think that's somewhat what I was trying to say, too, about our tours that we've had, a couple of them at the slave dungeons in Ghana, is that's part of the conversation, is this deep regret. And part of what their narrative is that they didn't understand what U.S. enslavement looked like, but nevertheless, the regret, the sense of regret is there. And I think that you're right. That is important, and it's also interesting that it has not been mirrored at the same level by the real perpetrators, which is England, France, the U.S., Portugal, Spain.
And rest assured, there were more people whose families were disrupted and taken away than there were people that were participating. And these were, there were kings and leaders that were involved in that, and so I know I may be sounding like I'm repeating this, but it was really a recognition when that student mentioned in that class, because her family, continues to remember that ancestor that they will never meet again, or their descendants they will never meet again, that was taken away, never to be seen again. But I just want to also say something that they thought would never happen is through African, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of Rick Kittle's organization, and I'm not poaching a commercial, but they thought that we would never be able to find out where we came from. And we're able to DNA to at least determine, genetically who we are in terms of the continent.
African ancestry is what you're talking about.
Yes.
African Ancestry Incorporated. Yeah, and there are people that dispute that science, but certainly the DNA testing and African ancestry is where I would take it if I was going to do it, because now we're seeing some of these other sites selling people's data, their DNA data, and also because the African Ancestry site has more specific DNA samples to compare, more specifics inside the continent. They don't just say you're West African. They'll tell you specifically what nations you may have in your body system.
Could I just share a little backstory on that?
Sure.
I don't know if people remember in the 90s, the African burial ground was uncovered in New York City.
Yes.
And there was a lot that went on. I'm not going to go into that. But the remains were sent to Michael Blakely at Howard University, who was a cultural anthropologist. And Rick Kittle, who was a geneticist, he worked on that. And he also worked on the Human Genome Project. So he took the information gleaned from working on the African burial ground and working on the Human Genome Project to develop AfricanAncestry.com, and which enabled us to do something we thought would never, ever happen, to determine who we are and where we came from. And I just think that I just was amazed by that reality. And a lot of these other companies, they are knockoffs because African Ancestry was the very first.
Yeah, and I think we'll see more and more, more and more advancement in the specificity and accuracy of these kinds of tests. And so the pinpointing, but at the same time, and it's going on in the YouTube chat, yes, African Ancestry is Black-owned. They're asking in the chat. And someone said they'll never use 23andMe. That is owned by, I believe, the Church of the Latter-day Saints, or someone affiliated with it. And so we've seen some of these sites turning over DNA. I don't anticipate African ancestry doing that. Do you, Fahima?
Well, no, actually, they destroy, from what I understand, they destroy the sample right after, they've, processed your information. And I've used it because I was working on a documentary on someone that you actually interviewed that I will remain nameless. And that was also part of the project. We actually had her African ancestry DNA done to be part of the reveal in the documentary.
Oh, I can't wait to see it. We're talking with Professor Fahima Seck, a longtime reparations activist. It is a Freedmen Friday, and we've got a lot to talk about.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
The holidays can be a time of increased stress for those struggling with opioid or stimulant addiction. They can also be a time for pause, reflection, opportunity, and new beginnings. This holiday season, choose treatment and recovery, embrace the company of family and friends, and create special moments. Find a proven opioid or stimulant addiction treatment provider near you at choosechangeca.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you, when we fight, we win. The Youth Justice Coalition is challenging America's addiction to incarceration and discrimination. YJC works to dismantle policies leading to mass incarceration, law enforcement violence, and the school-to-prison pipeline. Their approach? Transformative justice, community intervention, free LA high school, legal defense, and system monitoring. YJC promotes safety without relying on prisons. Their goal? Prevent system contact and help people exit the system through direct action, advocacy, and education. Want to get involved or need help? Call 323-235-4243. That's 323-235-4243. Join YJC in creating change. When we fight, we win. KBLA Talk 1580, your voice for justice. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
That was another way. I would smoke once an hour. That didn't work either. All that would happen at some point of the day, I would end up doubling up. Other ways that I tried to quit was I stopped buying cigarettes totally. But if I took 3 puffs off of 15 friends, those didn't count because they weren't my cigarettes and they weren't full cigarettes. I went through a lot.
Every attempt is part of your story to quit for good. Visit Kick It California today at kickitca.org.
Well, good morning, kiddo. I love that you're home from college. I've missed you.
Still taking your nature-made vitamins?
Every day. A multivitamin and a probiotic. You better be taking yours.
Still looking out for me, Mom.
I'll never stop.
Made to care for you every day. Nature Made, the #1 pharmacist-recommended vitamin and supplement brand. Find us in the vitamin aisle, based on a survey of pharmacists who recommend branded vitamins and supplements.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate loses and love wins.
Talking with Professor Fahima Seck. She was a founding co-chair of the Howard University chapter of NCOBRA. So let's talk about that. First of all, define Pan-Africanism as you see it, and talk to me about why it is that these reparations organizations, specifically Pan-African in lineage, don't seem to be able to work together.
Well, let me just say this, and I don't mean to be offensive. And my view is, from having watched and observed, is that not the people that are actually on the ground and earnestly wanting to do work, but the founders are grifters, and we're under a psyops. Because I haven't been involved. The last thing I did was reparations when I assisted Bob Brown in his reparations lawsuit, which was after Deidre Pullman's lawsuit, and that was like after I had graduated and I had started a PhD, and I didn't think that I would have any further time. And so the last thing I did around reparations has been, helping Bob Brown with his research for his lawsuit. And so I've stepped back and I've been watching and observing. And this is my view. I'm not trying to castigate those people who really think that they're part of these groups and they're doing earnest work. I believe that they're under a psyop because the founders are grifters, in my view. And reparations is not their agenda. For one, if it were, why would you be attacking legislatures who are the only ones that can write legislation to put reparations in? I had heard someone actually say that the mayor of Chicago was undermining reparations and giving monies that belong to citizens to immigrants, which is false. Actually, the mayor of Chicago actually did the executive order to fund a reparations commission, and monies for migrants come from the federal government. He never mentioned that the money that the governors from red states were sending migrants to blue states, and that they get, if you're in a border state, you get money from the federal government to address migrants. And, to sit here and say that someone who actually funded a reparations commission is undermining it is just patently false, part of the misinformation and disinformation campaign. And people that hear this stuff...
That sounds like Mark Carter. That sounds like a Mark Carter
You're not
move.
too far. You're not too far off. You're not too far
We're talking
off.
about Mayor Brandon Johnson. They're the black mayor of Chicago, the current black mayor of Chicago.
He's been under attack.
Yeah.
He's been under attack. He didn't sign up for this, and he's trying to do the best that he can. And I think the person that did the best explanation of what's going on, and I know that current Congressman Jesse Jackson is on this station, and I listened to his show. But his brother is the congressman, and he did an excellent explanation at a meeting last year, explaining what happened. The migrant crisis with respect to Venezuela in particular was started by Donald Trump. He tried to overthrow Venezuela, take their oil, and install this guy named Juan Guaidó from Florida as the president. He said, we're going to take their oil. And I had friends who were activists, and I was out there too, because they had taken over the Venezuelan embassy at the behest of the Venezuelan government. And we were bringing them food and running from the police, during the Trump administration. But he created the Venezuelan crisis. Venezuela is an oil-producing country, part of OPEC. There's no reason why someone from Venezuela should be coming to seek asylum to the U.S. in the U.S. Because when Hugo Chavez he was the first indigenous president, he took the resources and used it for the people in the country. And in fact, he was actually even providing oil subsidies to low-income people in this country. So, I mean, this is insanity, and people, all they have to do is look this stuff up.
Yeah, well, not everyone knows how to do that. And folks end up looking at misinformation. Professor Seck, I'm going to circle back to your definition of Pan-Africanism.
Well, essentially, it's doing the work for Black people where you are. You don't have to even ever have to have stepped foot on the continent to be a Pan-Africanist. It could be tutoring children, doing mutual aid, like the work that Black Lives Matter does, grassroots, that's Pan-Africanism. Doing for the least of these that are in your community, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think, Fahima, that it also has to, well, this is my opinion, because I actually, although I'm in agreement with many of the things that lineage folks say, I consider myself a Pan-Africanist in the sense that I believe that people of African descent, Black people worldwide, should have a particular bond and unity around issues that are mutually beneficial, issues that further the well-being of Black people globally, and that we should have special communication and solidarity around those issues.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just, addressing some of the criticisms that these folks, are contending. Oh, well, you're focusing on people in Africa. You don't have to have ever stepped your foot on the continent to be a Pan-Africanist, but doing for Black people where you are. And yes, understanding and recognizing that unique bond.
Yeah. I mean, does that preclude someone from being Black America first?
This is what I believe. I believe in self-determination. People have a right to define themselves however they choose, but they do not have a right to tell other people who they are. And part of this psyops is folks a campaign to tell other people that they aren't Black.
When you say psyops, explain what you mean by that.
Well, the thing is that
psychological operation.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was really created to get Black people divided. It wasn't. That was the agenda, because reparations was such an obscure issue at the time. This is why it was selected. And there's a lot more that I could say, but we are under the tyranny of the clock, as I always say when I'm ending my show. There are things that are going on that people aren't aware. Most of these folks have gotten involved in the last several years. I've been involved for quite some time. I'm not active in reparations at this time. I'm simply an observer. I am aware of many of the people that are involved in the commissions around the country and that are doing the work, but I'm sitting back and I'm watching and I'm connecting the dots.
And so you believe that strain of ADOS or FBA that separates Black people, Black Americans from Africans or other Black people worldwide is part of a psychological operation to divide Black people?
Yes, I do. Now, I'm not talking about the people who are blindly following them. I'm talking about the genesis, because I'm sorry. Actually, the founder of ADOS and I graduated undergrad in 1999. We were in the same graduating class. I'm not going to say she was a member of NCOBA, but I know that she was aware that we were doing those symposiums with Randall Robinson and those forums that we were having. So she had to know about it. And at the time, our goal was to just make people aware. And the fact of the matter is they used that in an effort to divide Black people, because reparations at the time was a fringe issue. And the objective via Steve Bannon was to get Black people to either vote for Donald Trump at that time or ride the couch, not vote at all.
Yeah, as you say, we are up against the clock here. Fahima, tell folks how to reach out to you if you want to, or to follow your work.
Well, I'm still on the hellscape at Fahima90, which is Twitter, X. I'm still on the hellscape, so people can, follow me on the hellscape at Fahima90. That's the best way to publicly get in touch with me. And I just want to reiterate, have folks call their prospective Congress people and ask them to co-sponsor H.R. 40. And if your state has a commission on reparations, go there and support it.
Professor Fahima Seck, thank you so much for joining us.
It's been my pleasure. I'm honored, Dominique, and thank you for the opportunity.
Phone lines are wide open, 800-920-1580. That's next after news, traffic, and sports.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. Donald Trump is nominating Troy Mink for Air Force Secretary. Mink, a director at the National Reconnaissance Office, will work closely with Defense Secretary nominee Pete Hegseth. If confirmed, Mink will oversee critical Air Force programs. President-elect Trump's cabinet picks faced Senate confirmation hearings Thursday. Pam Bondi, Doug Burgum, Lee Zeldin, and Scott Bessent testified. A polar vortex will bring below zero temperature